102 screws and clinical repercussion. Single center experience, Igor Chechen, Brazil.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Igor Chechen from Windov, Brazil, and I'm going to present about our experience with pedicle screws in the subaxial cervical spine, where we made a comparative analysis between the tomographic positioning and the clinical repercussion. I have no conflicts of interest in this presentation. So to begin, the pedicle screws are a technical option for instrumentation in almost every condition of the cervical spine. It has an increased stability over the lateral mesh screws, but by the other side, it has an increased neurovascular risk. The pedicle and the vertebral artery malformations are relative contraindications, and in order to evaluate that, we shall perform MRI, CT scan, and X-rays to see the feasibility of this technique. Biomechanical studies shows that the pedicle screws can be even 4 times stronger than the lateral mesh screws. And we see also that this strength remains in a more linear fashion along the time. So the objectives of our study and our practice were to compare the clinical and radiological results and to evaluate the safety of the application of the pedicle screws in subaxial spine, compare the positioning of the pedicle screws and their relationship with the respective instrumented levels, evaluate the deviation rate obtained with our hybrid technique and compare it with the international literature. We've operated 19 patients and inserted 102 screws. Almost all of these screws, the vast majority, were between 2019 and 2021, between C3 and C6. Our technique was a hybrid technique with concepts with the original Abumis technique, the pedicle axis view, and the funnel technique. In the postoperative period, we used the NEO classification to evaluate the positioning and searched for signs and symptoms of cord injuries, nerve root injuries, and vertebral artery injuries. The hybrid technique used the same starting point of the Abumi technique, the original description, with the entry point on the lateral of the center of the lateral mass and close to the posterior border of the upper cervical facet. We've performed 3 fluoroscopic views in each step of the procedure, AP, lateral, and pedicle axis view, and we've removed the cortical bone in order to create a funnel so that the surgeon can gain more mobility with the hand and search for the medial border of the pedicle that is stronger. In this picture we can see the starting point of the technique and also the 3 fluoroscopic views used in each step of the procedure, AP, lateral, and pedicle axis view. The NEO classification used in the postoperative period, it can be used for lateral or medial deviations and goes from grade 0 to grade 3, being the major perforations grade 2 and 3. This is the demographic data table of our patients. And as results, we found a very good accuracy, the best in C6 with almost 97% of good positioning. The deviations were more lateral than medial, and in the statistical analysis, we found with significance that the deviations occurred more in C4 than in C3, C5, and C6. Comparing to the international literature, we can see that we had a good deviation rate similar to the other big series, and being comparable even with techniques that used tomographic tools for positioning. As complications attributable to the screws on the postoperative period, we had only one patient that developed radicular pain and paresthesia. We had no vertebral artery injuries. This is the case where the patient developed the radicular pain. We can see mispositioning at the right pedicle of C6. The patient improved without the need for removal of the screw. Again, comparing to the international literature, we see that complications related to the misplacement of the screws are not very common, and even the vertebral artery injuries are not common. As advantage, we can set that we may increase the stability of fixations, especially in very unstable lesions. We can see this patient as an example with a tumor of C2 that we've used pedicle screws in C4 to increase the stability. We can also save arthrodesis levels or even avoid circumferential approaches. This can be useful in patients with ankylosing spondylitis or diseases that develops ossification of the spine. In this case, we can see a patient with ankylosing spondylitis where we've performed this technique. Also, we can perform osteosynthesis with preservation of the mobility of the segment. In this example, we can see a floating lateral mass where we've used the technique of the pedicle screw to perform compression. So, as conclusion, we can see that the pedicle screws show to be safe and with a low rate of complications attributable to the screws, being an option for instrumentation in the subaxial cervical spine. I would like to thank you very much, and this is my contact. I'm available for questions, and I hope to see you all in Brazil.
Thank you very much. Между прочим, нас смотрят около 400 человек. Несмотря на то, что в зале как бы мало народу, народ проявляет интерес. Следующий доклад, next presentation.